What's up guys, John Bird III here. We're back again for another video. In today's video, we're going to talk about my top forward-facing sonar live scope baits. I had a subscriber, and it's actually one of my buddies. He reached out. He commented on one of my last videos and said, I know you like beating the bank, but can we see some of your forward-facing sonar setups and how you use it to attack fish or attack the lake and try to catch fish using forward-facing sonar? So I'm like, all right, cool. So Logan, this video is for you. So to get started, I'm gonna talk about the first setup that I use the most. And then as we finish towards the end of the video, we're gonna talk about my stance on forward-facing sonar and where I sit with it. So the first setup that I have is the drop shot. So here I have the all new Custom Pro Gen 2 spinning reel. And I got it paired on a custom light 7-foot medium fast, and this is the all-purpose spinning rod. And I teased this rod the other day, said my new drop shot setup. And so, because you remember in the past, my previous setup was a Sonar all-purpose signature series rod with a custom light spinning reel. And so I wanted to test out this particular setup so I can have a backup, or who knows, maybe it might become my new primary, because the Sonar rod is an extra fast, so I want to see how a fast action pairs with the drop shot with a 3/8 ounce weight, which is what I got here, compared to the Sonar rod. So I'm gonna give this a shot. And so on here I have 8-pound Contra braid to an 8-pound Contra fluorocarbon leader. And as I mentioned before, I have a 3/8 ounce weight, and then I have a 2/0 rebarb hook. So that's my setup there. And my traditional worm that I throw on there is, one of them is the KVD Perfect Plastics filler worm. So this is in Morning Dawn. And I play around with different colors and stuff like that. So that is the primary setup for forward-facing sonar. And so how do I target fish with forward-facing sonar using the drop shot? So normally when I'm looking and panning around on live scope and I see a group of fish, even if they're like a bunch of bait, I was on Lake Monticello a few months ago, probably about a month and a half ago, and there was a big bait ball, and I seen some fish around it, and I threw my drop shot directly in the center of the bait ball and instantly got bit. If you haven't watched Todd Castleton's recent video, he actually shows you how you can have a whole bunch of bait around in the area and there still be fish all around there. So that is pretty much kind of the same theory that I figured out too. Like sometimes you can see a whole bunch of bait, and then sometimes when you get away from the bait but you got smaller pods, there's fish all around the bait sometimes somewhere too. So this is what I normally tend to do. If I see a stump, I throw this around a stump and just target the stump, because sometimes on live scope, when there's a stump on the water, you can't see the fish on the stump with live scope, because sometimes the way that they're positioned, you're not able to pick it up. And so I'll throw this around stumps. I also would target brush piles, and normally what I do, I throw it at the front of the brush pile, I throw it on the back of the brush pile, and I throw it directly in the center of the brush pile. And so that is pretty much how I use forward-facing sonar with the drop shot, because I'm actually targeting things. I'm also of a, I guess you can call it like an old school structure fisherman. Not only do I like to beat the bank, but if I'm offshore, I like to target certain specific things so that I can fish with. So like if I'm going down the bank and I'm fishing shallow, I'm on santee, whatever, fishing laydowns, or I'm on Murray fishing docks or stuff like that, I'm a very visual target oriented angler. And so live scope allows me to be able to see those same things, but they're submerged. And so that's how I kind of attack it. So that's why I use my drop shot set up particularly for those particular things using live scope. And now sometimes like you don't always catch fish with it. And so my next setup, and this is a setup that I don't have confidence in. Like y'all remember before I said I don't have confidence in the drop shot. I got a lot of confidence in the drop shot now. I've caught some big fish, 7.5 pound on the drop shot, like using live scope. And this is a setup that I haven't caught a fish on yet, but I've tried it out and I'm still trying it, because that's the only way you're gonna get better at a technique, is by using the specific setup and trying to get out there and try to catch fish. And so for me, that is, I guess you could say, minnow pinging. So this is a older rod. This is a Team Lose Custom Pro spinning rod. These are discontinued. This is just a rod that I have around here. And this is a 7-foot. A lot of guys like a 6'6", 6'8", 6'10". So I'm just trying this particular rod out. I like the cork EVA foam on here, so that's why I'm using this particular setup. But if I had to recommend any other rod, I would recommend like the custom like all-purpose rod. That would be great. The new LFS rod series that's coming out later in the fall, I think it's around November. They have a couple different shorter actions for your minnow pinging and stuff like that. I haven't figured out 100% if the shorter rod works better than a longer rod, because my thought process is if you make a long cast with a minnow style bait, like I feel like you need the longer rod so when they bite it, you can take up more line compared to a shorter rod like a 6'6", 6'8". Whereas a lot of other people saying you need a shorter rod so you can work the bait better. And so I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. So I'm just trying stuff. That's the only way you really gonna know is you try stuff. So Custom Pro 7-foot medium fast action rod. I got the Custom Light. This is the 200. And y'all know this was my main drop shot reel, and then I got the Custom Light shallow spoon, which I switched, and now it might be the new Custom Pro. And so that's the rod, that's the reel, 8-pound braid, 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, and then the actual bait itself. You got the Baby Z2 on, and that head is a queen tackle. It's like a little ball head, and so that particular size is a 1/4 ounce. Some people use 3/16. I've heard eighth. I've heard all kind of stuff. I don't know. Everybody uses a whole bunch of different stuff. So that is the actual setup. That particular color right there, and I don't know about by heart, but that particular color is smoky shad. And so it actually looks like a little shad. So that's why I picked this one right here. And so tomorrow I have a tournament on Lake Murray. And so I'm going to try this. This is a poop hit the fan setup for me. This isn't I'm about to go out there and catch them using this. That's not what this is. This is a poop hit the fan setup for me. Point blank period. The drop shot, I'm always gonna have a drop shot rigged up now. Like I said, I got confidence in it. My partner that I normally fish with, fish on Santee, he throws a drop shot around trees. I'm just like, man, I ain't come down here to throw a drop shot. I came around here to flip. So, but anyway, you can use that there too. So those are two baits that I tend to use when I'm forward facing sonar fishing. Again, one of them, the minnow pinging type deal, I don't have confidence in it. So I will definitely do another video to double back to talk about my experience with it once I get better at it. So Strike King just released 2 other new baits for forward facing sonar, and that's the pinging minnow and the homing minnow. So those are 2 great options also that you can actually use to target forward facing sonar fish if you want to just, as they say, ping a minnow, pang a minnow. So those are another couple options that you can use too, because they're preloaded jig heads with the swim bait already on there within it and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty cool. Another thing people do, they do the is it Cora tackles, the weird shaped looking lead head jig head with the hook on there. I understand how they use that too, and that's pretty interesting. So that's another option. Another bait that I tend to use also, and I think I got some in here somewhere. I'm not 100% sure I do. And maybe let's check back here. Let's see if I got some in here. If I do, yes, I do. And so they're in a little Ziploc bag. So that is the mock schooler. That little thing, they're sick. So this is another cool little bait that you can use to pang a minnow. To do the whole forward facing sonar, I don't know what you want to call that thing, minnow pinging type deal. So that's it for my actual setups. So now my stance on forward facing sonar and how I use it. I use forward facing sonar, as I said earlier in the video, to target specific pieces of cover underwater. Brush piles, cane piles, stumps, laydowns underwater, old trees, sunken bridges, sunken boats, all kind of stuff. That's what I use forward facing sonar to find, and I use the drop shot to actually target that specific type of cover underwater. That is what I tend to use it for, so I can, because since I can't visually see the thing above the water, that's how I use forward facing sonar. Because like back in the day, all the guys used 360. And I say back in the day, that's not even back in the day, that's a few years ago. 360 was very popular, and it still is popular today. So I use mine like 360, but I don't put my transducer in perspective mode. I leave it in forward. I was fishing with one of my buddies the other weekend. He fishing this shallow lake down the road from here called Goose Creek Reservoir, and he leaves his in perspective mode, and there's a lot of pads and stuff around there. So I may target, or I may just try to use perspective mode and give it a shot and see how I like that. But I tend to just leave it in. I don't tend to. I leave it in forward facing sonar, in forward facing mode, to target all of that specific stuff, and I just attack it as if I'm seeing it above water. And so normally above water, if I see the target like a cypress tree or something like that, dock, I grab a jig. I will grab like a Texas rig, a bladed jig, stuff like that. That's what I tend to gravitate to. But with fishing, it just seemed like with Lake Murray is particular. It's a different style of lake. Like Lake Murray, when you have a lake that has blueback herring in it, you cannot target that lake like you're a traditional lake that doesn't have blueback herring. Like, and I was talking to one of my coworkers the other week, and he said that when you have a lake that has, say, gizzard shad, like the TVA type lakes, gizzard shad go down. They're not necessarily up, whereas blueback herring sit up in the column and they're closer to the top. So that's why bass, especially the bass on Lake Murray, are always looking up, and you have the schooling action, whereas the gizzard shad are down in the water. And when he told me that, it didn't hit me until later, and I thought about it. I was like, man, that makes so much sense. So that is why I struggle so much, because I'm like, oh man, there go fish right there. When I first got live scope, there go some fish right there, they're deep. So I was throwing like a 6XD, 5XD, 3XD, and I'm like, dang, why I can't get bit? Well, that's why, because the fish are sitting, they might be suspended, but they're suspended looking up. Whereas with the like on the TVA, you throw that big 6XD, 8XD, 10XD, and it dives deep because the gizzard shad and the bait are down. So that was the biggest tip that I learned from watching him use forward facing sonar on Lake Murray, and now that is something that I tend to try as well. Another thing that you can do when you're using forward facing sonar on a blueback herring lake, you know that those fish, they group up together and they'll be sitting high in the water column. Well, you can throw like a sexy dog, you can throw a sexy dog junior, you can throw top water baits, you can throw something sneaky like a little sneaky bait. You can throw something like that, and you can actually see the fish come up, and as they start schooling, you can see it on live scope. So it's actually a really, really cool deal. But I think live scope gets a bad rap. By no means am I considered a scoper. I'm not. I will never adopt the name scoper because that's not who I am. I'm going to Lake Murray tomorrow to fish this tournament, and I got a flipping stick in the boat. I keep a flipping stick everywhere I go, because if I ever can find something or something that sets up very similar to what I like to fish, and I got a frog in there, oh, I'm going to do it. So I'm just trying to, another way for you to get better, just think about it like this. The only way you can gain muscle is by actually lifting weights, doing strength and conditioning type stuff like that. Same thing with forward face sonar. The only way you can get better at it is by using it. If they banned forward face sonar from every club and trail, would I be pissed? Yes and no. I'll be pissed because I done spent my money on it. But no, I wouldn't be pissed because I really don't want to fish with it anyway. So I'm the one who sits in the middle. Like if I had to pick a side, I would rather fish without it. But in today's time, it's hard to compete without it. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they explained to me how you can actually use it to catch fish just using so many different other techniques. Like Tyler Williams, who fishes the Elite Series, he's an Elite Series rookie. He was catching them on live scope throwing a jig, and he constantly had a jig rigged up. He might have pinged the Minnow here and there, but he constantly was catching them on the jig. And I was like, man, if I can figure that out, I would feel so much better about it, because I'm gonna go and throw a jig on freaking everything I can using forward face sonar before I pick up anything else. But the drop shot kind of gives me that middle of the road, because I still reel down and I set the hook on the drop shot. I don't care. I don't just reel into them and pull. I think that's stupid. I reel down and I set the hook on them. Because when you're talking about a 7 foot or however long your drop shot rod is, and you can't really see this, when we're talking about a rod like a spinning rod, you got the forgiveness in the tip of the rod, you got light braid, and you got light fluorocarbon, and you got your drag kind of loose. So you got all these different points to be able to mitigate you from setting the hook. So set the hook. And if you break off, you's gonna break off regardless. If you lean into them and that fish start digging, you's gonna break off regardless. So when you got all that mitigation from the soft tip in the rod to the light line to the light wire hook, and then you got the loose drag, you can afford to set the hook. Like, I don't see why you can't. And I haven't lost a fish. Anytime I've lost a fish from setting the hook on the drop shot, it's because I already had a nick in my line. I was gonna lose that fish regardless, because once I got that fish close and that fish start digging really hard, it's gonna pop. So whether I set the hook or he digs and it pops my line, I'm gonna lose the fish. So when you have all this mitigation in these spinning setups, it's okay to set the hook. Like, why not? And if you disagree, leave a comment down below in the comment section and let me know why. Let me know what your forward-facing sonar baits are. If you're not a forward-facing sonar fisherman, tell me why you don't like fishing with forward-facing sonar. Tell me your favorite way to fish. And also, leave a comment down below to let me know what type of other content that you want to see on this channel. I still got to do my BFS setup, so that's coming also. So, and I still got a lot of other topics, but I want to hear more so about what you guys want to hear me talk about. So make sure you leave a comment down below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you have somebody that's trying to find the right forward-facing sonar setup, make sure you send this video to them. Hit that like button. I'm JB3. I got to get back to living the dream. I'm hungry, and I got to turn in the morning, and I got to get up at 3:45. I'll catch you later.